The book of Daniel opens in a moment that feels like the end of everything familiar. Yet it is only the beginning of an extraordinary journey of courage and hope. Jerusalem has fallen. The temple of the Lord has been entered by foreign hands. Sacred vessels are taken away, and young Hebrews are carried into the heart of the most powerful empire on earth. But this story does not begin with defeat. It begins with a powerful reminder that even when nations clash and lives are uprooted, the hand of God is still guiding history towards something greater. In chapter 1, the story opens during the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, comes against Jerusalem and besieges it. The first thing the text wants us to see is that Babylon is strong, Jerusalem is broken, and the people of God are now living under the authority of a pagan kingdom. Yet the narrator adds something even more important and hopeful. The Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into Nebuchadnezzar's hand. Babylon conquered Jerusalem. But Babylon was not outside the rule of God. Nebuchadnezzar, Tsar, takes some of the vessels from the house of God and brings them into the treasury of his own God. Visually, this is a powerful beginning. The holy objects from Jerusalem are now inside Babylon. It looks as if the God of Israel has been defeated, as if the temple has lost, as if the empire has won. But the rest of the book will slowly reveal the opposite truth. The God whose vessels were carried into Babylon still rules over Babylon itself. Then the focus moves from the city to a group of young captives with bright futures ahead. The king commands Ashpenaz, the chief of his officials, to bring certain young men from Israel's royal family and nobility. They must be without physical defect, good-looking, skillful in wisdom, knowledgeable, quick to understand, and able to serve in the king's palace. These are not random prisoners. Babylon is selecting the best of Judah's future, much like a new nation, welcoming talented immigrants and shaping them for leadership. Among them are Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They are young, far from home, far from the temple, far from the rhythms of worship they once knew. Now they are placed inside the palace of Babylon, surrounded by a language, literature, food culture, and religious world that does not belong to the covenant of Israel. The plan is clear. They are to be trained for 3 years in the language and literature of the Chaldeans. They are to eat from the king's food and drink from the king's wine. At the end of that time, they are expected to stand before the king, not as sons of Judah, but as useful servants of Babylon. Even their names are changed. Daniel becomes Belteshazzar. Hananiah becomes Shadrach. Mishael becomes Meshach. Azariah becomes Abednego. This is not a small detail. In the ancient world, names often carried meaning, memory, and identity. Babylon is not only relocating these young men. Babylon is trying to rename them, reshape them, and absorb them. This is one of the important points in chapter 1. The pressure Daniel faces is not only physical captivity, it is cultural assimilation. Babylon wants him to learn its language, serve its government, eat from its table, answer to its names, and slowly forget the identity he received from the God of Israel. The chapter is showing how exile works. It does not always begin by destroying faith openly. Sometimes it begins by training people to live as if faith no longer matters. But in the middle of that pressure, one sentence changes the direction of the story with inspiring courage. Daniel resolved in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that the king drank. Daniel does not begin with a public speech. He does not start a rebellion. He does not attack everyone around him. He makes a decision before God. In a foreign palace, under a foreign king, with a foreign name, Daniel draws a quiet line inside his heart. The text does not explain every detail about why the food would defile him. Some understand it as a matter of Jewish food laws. Others point to the possibility that the royal food may have been connected to idol worship. But the main point is clear and full of hope. Daniel sees this as a matter of faithfulness. There are things Babylon can teach him, places it can put him, and names it can call him. But there is a limit Babylon cannot cross. Daniel asks the chief official for permission not to defile himself. And once again, the text quietly shows God at work. God gives Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the official. The official is afraid, because if Daniel and his friends look weaker than the other young men, his own life may be in danger before the king. So Daniel proposes a test. For 10 days, he and his friends will be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. After that, their appearance can be compared with the young men who eat from the king's table. The official agrees. At the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his friends appear better and healthier than all the young men who ate the king's food. So the steward continues giving them vegetables instead of the royal portion. The scene is simple, but it carries the entire spirit of the book. Daniel is not preserved because Babylon is weak. He is preserved because God is faithful. His obedience does not remove him from Babylon, but it teaches him how to live for God inside Babylon with strength and influence. Then the chapter widens the picture with wonderful blessing. God gives these 4 young men knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom. Daniel also receives understanding in visions and dreams. This detail prepares the reader for everything that will come later. The young man who refuses defilement at the king's table will soon stand before kings and interpret mysteries that no one in Babylon can explain. When the time of training is finished, the young men are brought before Nebuchadnezzar. The king speaks with them, and among all of them, none are found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They enter the king's service, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding that the king asks them about, he finds them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his kingdom. The chapter ends by saying that Daniel remains until the first year of King Cyrus. That final note quietly stretches Daniel's life across empires. Babylon may rise. Babylon may rule. Babylon may rename captives and fill its palaces with the treasures of conquered nations. But Daniel will outlast Babylon's first great king and live to see the beginning of another era. This opening chapter gives the whole book its foundation. Daniel is a story about exile, but not defeat. It is a story about pressure, but not compromise. It is a story about kingdoms. But from the beginning, the reader is being taught to look beyond the visible throne and see the hand of the God who rules history with purpose and hope. Daniel has entered the service of Babylon, but the next scene shows that wisdom in the king's palace is not enough when God hides a mystery from human power. In chapter 2 of the book of Daniel, the story moves from the training of young exiles to the troubled mind of the king himself. Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of Babylon, has a dream, but this is not an ordinary dream that fades quietly with the morning. The text says, his spirit is troubled, and sleep leaves him. Inside the royal palace, the atmosphere changes. The king summons the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans. These are the men Babylon trusts when the world becomes mysterious. They are supposed to read omens, interpret signs, and explain what ordinary men cannot understand. But Nebuchadnezzar does something that exposes the limits of Babylon's wisdom. He does not simply ask for the interpretation of the dream. He demands that they tell him the dream itself and then explain what it means. The wise men stand before the king and answer as any interpreter would. Let the king tell the dream, and they will give the interpretation. But Nebuchadnezzar refuses. He suspects deception. If they cannot reveal the dream, he says they will be destroyed. If they can reveal it, they will receive honor and reward. The tension rises quickly. The wise men answer that no one on earth can do what the king asks. No king, however great and powerful, has ever demanded such a thing from any magician or astrologer. They admit the truth without realizing how important it is. The thing the king asks is too difficult, and no one can reveal it, except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. That sentence becomes the doorway into the meaning of the chapter. Babylon has knowledge, ritual power, and experts, but it does not have access to the secret unless the God of heaven reveals it. Nebuchadnezzar becomes furious and commands that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. And because Daniel and his friends have been placed among the wise men, the decree reaches them too. The young Hebrew, who had just been found wiser than the others, is now under a death sentence because the wisdom of Babylon has failed. When Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, comes to carry out the command, Daniel responds with prudence and discretion. He does not panic. He asks why the decree from the king is so severe. After hearing the matter, Daniel goes to the king and asks for time so that he may show the interpretation. Then Daniel returns to his house and tells Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The 4 young Hebrews seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that they will not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. The camera of the story moves away from the throne room and into a quieter place. No golden halls, no royal threats, no crowd of frightened officials. Just 4 exiles praying in a foreign land, asking the God of heaven to reveal what no empire can discover. During the night, the mystery is revealed to Daniel in a vision, and before Daniel runs to the king, before he speaks to the court, before he receives any honor, he blesses God. Daniel says that wisdom and might belong to God. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. This prayer is one of the keys to the whole book of Daniel. The dream is not only about future kingdoms, it is about the God who rules over them before they ever rise. Daniel's first response is not curiosity about prophecy, but worship. He understands that the revelation of history belongs to the God who governs history. Daniel then goes to Arioch and asks him not to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He is brought before Nebuchadnezzar. The king asks if Daniel can make known the dream and its interpretation. Daniel's answer is careful and full of faith. He does not present himself as a religious genius. He says that no wise man, enchanter, magician, or astrologer can show the king the mystery. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the latter days. Now the dream is finally described. The king saw a great image, mighty and bright, standing before him. Its appearance was frightening. The head was of fine gold. Its chest and arms were of silver. Its middle and thighs were of bronze. Its legs were of iron. Its feet were partly of iron and partly of clay. Then, while the king watched, a stone was cut out by no human hand. The stone struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold were all broken together. They became like chaff from the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away until no trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Daniel then gives the interpretation with clarity and hope. Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold. God has given him kingdom, power, might, and glory. After him, another kingdom will arise, inferior to his. Then a third kingdom of bronze will rule over the earth. Then a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, will break and crush. But the feet and toes, partly iron and partly clay, show a divided kingdom. partly strong and partly brittle. The vision moves through the rise and fall of human power: gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay. Each material looks impressive, but each one is temporary. Each kingdom has its moment, but none of them can stand forever. Then comes the part that gives the chapter its deepest meaning and greatest hope. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. It will not be left to another people. It will break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it will stand forever. The stone cut from the mountain by no human hand is the great contrast to the statue. The statue is human power visible, massive, layered with glory, but fragile at its foundation. The stone is God's kingdom, not built by human hands, not dependent on imperial strength, and not subject to collapse. There are different views about the exact identification of the kingdoms in the statue, especially when connecting Daniel with later history. But the main message of the chapter is clear and central. Human empires rise by permission, rule for a season, and fall under God's authority. The vision is not given so the audience will admire the statue, but so they will trust the kingdom that will never fall. When Nebuchadnezzar hears this, he falls on his face before Daniel and honors him. He confesses that Daniel's God is God of gods, Lord of kings, and revealer of mysteries. The king promotes Daniel, gives him many great gifts, and makes him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men. Daniel does not forget his friends. He requests that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, while Daniel remains at the king's court. Chapter 2 ends with a dramatic reversal filled with hope. The young exile, who was under a death sentence, now stands honored in the palace. The wise men of Babylon were powerless, but the God of Israel revealed the hidden thing. Nebuchadnezzar's dream begins with a terrifying statue, but it ends with a mountain filling the whole earth. And from this point forward, the book of Daniel teaches the viewer how to read history. Do not be deceived by the size of the statue. Every empire has feet. Every kingdom has an end. But the kingdom God establishes will stand forever. The king has heard that God will establish a kingdom that will never fall. But in the very next scene, Babylon tries to build an image that demands the worship of everyone. In chapter 3 of the book of Daniel, the story moves from a dream interpreted in the palace to a massive image standing in the plain of Dura. Nebuchadnezzar makes an image of gold, towering above the land, and gathers the officials of the empire to come to its dedication. The scene is imperial, public, and intimidating. Satraps, prefects, governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and rulers of the provinces stand before the image the king has set up. Babylon is not only displaying religion, Babylon is displaying unity, control, and power. The empire gathers its leaders in one place under one command, before one image. Then the herald cries out with a loud voice, when the sound of the hornpipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music is heard. All peoples, nations, and languages must fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a burning, fiery furnace. The pressure is total. The music begins and the crowd bows. The sound of the instruments fills the plain and bodies lower to the ground in mass obedience. From the outside, it looks like perfect unity, but hidden inside the crowd are three men who remain standing. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do not bow. The text does not describe a speech from them at first. It simply shows their refusal through their posture. While the empire bends, they remain upright. While Babylon turns worship into a political command, They obey the God of Israel. Certain Chaldeans come forward and accuse the Jews. They remind the king of his own decree and point directly to the 3 Hebrews whom he had appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon. Their accusation is sharp. These men pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods, and they do not worship the golden image you have set up. Nebuchadnezzar is furious. The king who once honored Daniel's God now rages against Daniel's friends. He commands that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. The question is direct. Is it true that they do not serve his gods or worship the image he has made? Then the king gives them another chance. When the music sounds again, if they fall down and worship, all will be well. But if they do not worship, they will be thrown immediately into the burning fiery furnace. And then Nebuchadnezzar asks the question that exposes the heart of the conflict. Who is the God who would deliver you out of my hands? This is the central challenge of the chapter. The furnace is not only a punishment, it is a public test of authority. Nebuchadnezzar is asking whether any God can stand between his command and the lives of these 3 men. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answer with one of the most courageous confessions in the book of Daniel. They tell the king they have no need to answer him in this matter. If their God, whom they serve, is able to deliver them, he will deliver them from the burning, fiery furnace and from the king's hand. But if not, the king must know that they will not serve his gods or worship the golden image he has set up. This is the deepest point of their faith. They did not obey God only because they are certain he will rescue them in the way they desire. They believe God is able to deliver, but they do not make deliverance the condition of obedience. Their faith is not built on escaping the fire. Their faith is built on the worthiness of God. Whether they live or die, they will honor him. Nebuchadnezzar's expression changes. His fury becomes visible. He orders the furnace heated 7 times more than usual. The command is excessive, but it shows the king's rage. The strongest soldiers in his army bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in their cloaks, tunics, hats, and garments and throw them into the burning fiery furnace. The fire is so intense that the flames kill the men who carry them out. The soldiers fall before the heat. But the 3 Hebrews, bound in their clothes, fall into the burning flames. Then the story slows down with hope. Nebuchadnezzar rises in haste. He is astonished. He asks his counselors if they threw 3 men bound into the fire. They answer that they did. But the king says he sees 4 men unbound walking in the middle of the fire. They are not hurt, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. The same furnace meant to destroy them has become the place where they are seen walking free. The ropes are gone, but the men remain. The fire consumes what bound them, but it does not consume them. The identity of the 4th figure has been understood in different ways. Some see an angel sent by God, especially because Nebuchadnezzar later says God sent his angel and delivered his servants. Others see a deeper foreshadowing of divine presence with God's people. The chapter itself keeps the focus clear. God did not abandon his faithful servants in the fire. He was present with them in the place where Babylon expected them to disappear. Nebuchadnezzar comes near the door of the furnace and calls them out. He does not call them rebels now. He calls them servants of the Most High God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out of the fire, and the officials gather around them. The evidence is visible. The fire had no power over their bodies. The hair of their heads is not singed. Their cloaks are not harmed. The smell of fire has not passed upon them. Nebuchadnezzar responds with praise. He blesses the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants. He says they trusted in him, set aside the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Then the king makes a decree that no people, nation, or language should speak against their God, because no other God is able to rescue in this way. After that, the king promotes Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Chapter 3 is not simply a story about survival. It is a story about worship under pressure. In Chapter 2, the statue in the dream showed the rise and fall of kingdoms. In Chapter 3, the golden image shows what kingdoms often demand when they forget their place before God. They do not only want service, they want worship. And in the middle of that demand, 3 exiles show what faithfulness looks like inside an empire. They serve in Babylon, but they do not belong to Babylon. They respect authority, but they will not give worship to an idol. They stand before the king, enter the fire, and come out alive, because the God of Israel is able to keep his servants, even when obedience leads them into the flames. Nebuchadnezzar has seen God reveal mysteries. He has seen God preserve faithful men in the fire. But now the story turns inward, to the pride of the king himself. In Chapter 4 of the book of Daniel, the account begins in an audience way. Nebuchadnezzar speaks directly to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. This is not Daniel introducing the king from the outside. It is the king himself telling what the Most High God has done to him. He begins with praise. He declares that the signs and wonders of the Most High are great, and that his kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. But before the king learned this, he had to be brought down from the height of royal glory. Nebuchadnezzar says he was at ease in his house and prospering in his palace. The image is calm and powerful. The king of Babylon resting inside the center of empire, surrounded by wealth, security servants, walls, gardens, and the visible greatness of his reign. But while he is at ease, a dream comes to him and makes him afraid. This time the dream does not involve the statue of kingdoms. It is a vision of a tree. Nebuchadnezzar sees a tree in the middle of the earth. Its height is great, it grows strong, and its top reaches to heaven. It can be seen to the ends of the earth. Its leaves are beautiful. Its fruit is abundant, and food is found in it for all. The beasts of the field find shade beneath it. The birds of the heavens live in its branches. All flesh is fed from it. The image is majestic. The tree represents life, provision, reach, and power. It looks like the empire itself, vast, visible, impressive, and strong. Then the dream changes. A watcher, a holy one, comes down from heaven and cries aloud, "Cut down the tree, chop off its branches, strip off its leaves, scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it, and the birds from its branches. But the stump and roots are to remain in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze among the grass of the field." Then the language shifts from the tree to a man. He will be wet with the dew of heaven. His portion will be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. His mind will be changed from a man's mind, and the mind of a beast will be given to him, until 7 periods of time pass over him. The purpose of the sentence is stated clearly, so that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will. Nebuchadnezzar is troubled as before. He calls the wise men of Babylon. The magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and astrologers come in. And the king tells them the dream, but they cannot make known the interpretation. At last, Daniel comes before him, the one whom the king calls Belteshazzar. Nebuchadnezzar recognizes that Daniel has insight unlike the others. He tells him the dream and asks for the interpretation. When Daniel hears it, he is alarmed for a while, and his thoughts terrify him. This moment matters. Daniel does not seem eager to announce judgment. He does not rejoice over the humiliation of the king. He understands the weight of the message he must deliver. Then Daniel speaks. He says that the tree Nebuchadnezzar saw is the king himself. He has grown and become strong. His greatness reaches to heaven, and his dominion reaches to the ends of the earth. But the command from heaven means that he will be driven from among men. His dwelling will be with the beasts of the field. He will eat grass like an ox and be wet with the dew of heaven until he knows that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. The stump left in the ground means that his kingdom will be confirmed for him after he knows that heaven rules. This is one of the clearest theological statements in Daniel. The issue is not that Nebuchadnezzar is a king. The issue is that he has forgotten who gave him power. Daniel does not present government itself as evil, but he shows that every throne becomes dangerous when the ruler begins to treat borrowed authority as personal greatness. Daniel then gives counsel to the king. He urges Nebuchadnezzar to break off his sins by practicing righteousness and his iniquities by showing mercy to the oppressed. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of his prosperity. For a time, the warning stands over the king like a shadow. Then the story moves forward 12 months. Nebuchadnezzar, Tsar, is walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. From that height, he sees the city, the walls, the buildings, the grandeur, the order, the wealth, the evidence of empire spread before him. And the king says, "Is this not great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty?" The words are still in his mouth when a voice falls from heaven. The kingdom has departed from him. At that moment, the dream becomes reality. Nebuchadnezzar is driven from among men. He eats grass like an ox. His body is wet with the dew of heaven. His hair grows like eagle's feathers, and his nails become like bird's claws. The man who stood above nations is brought down to the open field. The king who commanded armies loses the dignity of human reason. The ruler who looked over Babylon and called it the work of his own power is made to live like a beast until he learns that heaven rules. The description is intense, but the point is not to mock Nebuchadnezzar. The point is to show the collapse of pride when a human being rejects dependence on God and makes himself the center of glory. He becomes less, not more, than he was created to be. In Daniel, humility is not weakness. Humility is seeing reality correctly. At the end of the appointed time, Nebuchadnezzar lifts his eyes to heaven. His reason returns to him, and the first thing he does is bless the Most High. He praises and honors him who lives forever. His dominion is everlasting. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing before him. He does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. No one can stop his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" Then Nebuchadnezzar's reason, majesty, and splendor return to him. His counselors and lords seek him again. He is restored to his kingdom, and still more greatness is added to him. But the king is not the same man at the end of chapter 4 that he was at the beginning. He now praises, exalts, and honors the King of heaven. He declares that all his works are right and his ways are just, and that those who walk in pride he is able to humble. Chapter 4 stands like a royal testimony inside the book of Daniel. The greatest king on earth learns that he is not the highest authority in the story. Babylon may be magnificent, but it is not ultimate. Nebuchadnezzar may rule over men, but the Most High rules over him. And this is why Daniel is not merely a book about surviving exile. It is a book about seeing history from heaven's perspective. Kings rise, cities shine, empires boast, but every throne remains under the rule of the God who gives power, removes power, and humbles the proud until they know that heaven rules. Nebuchadnezzar had been humbled until he learned that heaven rules. But the next king of Babylon enters the story, as if that lesson had never been spoken. In chapter 5 of the book of Daniel, the scene opens at night inside a royal feast. Belshazzar, the king, makes a great banquet for 1,000 of his lords, and he drinks wine before them. The empire is still dressed in gold, music, power, and confidence. But beneath the sound of the feast, Babylon is already standing on the edge of judgment. As the wine flows, Belshazzar gives a command that turns the celebration into an act of open defiance. He orders that the gold and silver vessels which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem be brought into the banquet hall. These were not ordinary cups. They belonged to the house of God. They had been taken when Jerusalem fell, carried from the temple into Babylon, and stored as trophies of conquest. Now Belshazzar brings them into a drunken feast. The king, his lords, his wives, and his concubines drink from them. And while they drink, they praise the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. The sacred vessels from Jerusalem are placed in the hands of a king who uses them to honor lifeless idols. The chapter is showing more than disrespect. It is showing spiritual blindness. Belshazzar is surrounded by the evidence of history. He knows what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He knows that the God of Israel humbled the proud king. Yet he takes what belonged to the temple and uses it as part of Babylon's arrogance. Then suddenly the feast is interrupted. At that very moment, the fingers of a human hand appear and write on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace near the lampstand. The king sees the hand as it writes. The music, the drinking, the confidence of the book room all collapse into terror. Belshazzar's color changes. His thoughts alarm him. His limbs give way and his knees knock together. The ruler, who had been bold enough to mock the holy things of God, is now trembling before a message he cannot understand. The king calls loudly for the enchanters, the astrologers. Once again, Babylon turns to its experts when a mystery appears. Belshazzar promises that whoever reads the writing and explains its meaning will be clothed in purple, have a chain of gold around his neck, and be made the third ruler in the kingdom. But all the king's wise men come in, and they cannot read the writing or make known the interpretation. The palace grows more disturbed. The king is alarmed. His lords are confused. The feast has become a courtroom, and no one in Babylon can read the sentence on the wall. Then the queen hears the words of the word, king and his lords, and she enters the banquet hall. She tells Belshazzar not to be alarmed. There is a man in the kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of Nebuchadnezzar, light, understanding, and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. His name is Daniel, though the king had named him Belteshazzar. Daniel is brought before the king. Belshazzar speaks to him as a man from the exiles of Judah, one brought from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar. He tells Daniel what he has heard about him and repeats the reward. If Daniel can read the writing and make known the interpretation, he will be clothed in purple, wear a gold chain, and become the third ruler in the kingdom. Daniel's answer is steady. He tells the king to keep his gifts and give his rewards to another. Yet he will read the writing and make known the interpretation. Before Daniel explains the words on the wall, he tells the story Belshazzar should have remembered. He speaks of Nebuchadnezzar, to whom the Most High God gave kingdom, greatness, glory, and majesty. All peoples, nations, and languages trembled before him. He killed whom he wished, kept alive whom he wished, raised up whom he wished, and humbled whom he wished. But when Nebuchadnezzar's heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened in pride, he was brought down from his kingly throne. His glory was taken from him. He was driven from among the children of mankind. His mind was made like that of a beast. He lived with wild donkeys, He ate grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind and sets over it whom he will. Then Daniel turns to Belshazzar. The words become direct. Belshazzar knew all this, yet he did not humble his heart. Instead, he lifted himself up against the Lord of heaven. He brought the vessels of God's house before him. He and his nobles drank wine from them. He praised gods that cannot see, hear, or know. But the God in whose hand was his breath, and whose were all his ways, he did not honor. This is the central indictment of chapter 5. Belshazzar is not judged because he lacked information. He is judged because he ignored the witness of history. He had seen enough to know that Babylon's power was not ultimate, but he treated holy things as trophies and praised idols while his own breath remained in the hand of God. Then Daniel reads the writing. Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. The meaning is clear and final. Mene, God has numbered the days of Belshazzar's kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, he has been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Parsin, his kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The message is not a warning for a distant future. It is a verdict already delivered. Belshazzar gives the command, and Daniel is clothed in purple with a chain of gold around his neck. A proclamation is made that he is the third ruler in the kingdom, but the honor is almost meaningless now, because the kingdom itself is about to fall. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, is killed, and Darius the Mede receives the kingdom. Chapter 5 brings the Babylonian story to its dramatic climax. The empire that once conquered Jerusalem carried away the vessels of the temple, renamed the sons of Judah, and filled the world with its glory, falls in a single night. The palace feast ends not with triumph, but with judgment, and the sacred vessels stand at the center of the scene. Babylon had taken them as proof of victory. Belshazzar had used them as instruments of mockery, but the God to whom they belonged had not been defeated. He had waited, ruled, warned, and finally numbered the kingdom's days. This chapter teaches the viewer how Daniel sees the fall of empires. Babylon does not collapse only because of politics or military weakness. It collapses because pride has reached the wall, and God himself has written the end of the story. Babylon has fallen in one night. But Daniel's story does not end with the fall of Babylon. The empire changes, the throne changes, the laws change. But the test of faithfulness continues. In chapter 6 of the book of Daniel, the story now unfolds under the rule of Darius the Mede. Daniel is no longer the young exile brought from Jerusalem. He is older now, experienced, proven, and respected. He has served through the rise and fall of Babylon, and now he stands inside a new administration under a new kingdom. Darius sets 120 satraps over the kingdom, and over them he appoints 3 high officials, one of whom is Daniel. These officials are responsible for supervising the satraps so the king will suffer no loss. But Daniel distinguishes himself above the others because an excellent spirit is in him. The king plans to set him over the whole kingdom. This creates tension immediately. The other officials and satraps begin to look for a ground of complaint against Daniel concerning the kingdom. They search for corruption, negligence, weakness, or failure, but they can find nothing. Daniel is faithful. No error or fault is found in him. The accusation cannot come from his work, so they decide it must come from his worship. They say they will not find any ground for complaint against Daniel unless they find it in connection with the law of his God. The officials come before the king with a plan. They advise Darius to establish an ordinance that for 30 days no one may make a petition to any god or man except to the king. Whoever disobeys must be thrown into the den of lions. They ask him to sign the decree, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be changed. Darius signs the document. The trap is now set. When Daniel knows that the document has been signed, he goes to his house. His windows are open toward Jerusalem. He gets down on his knees 3 times a day, prays, and gives thanks before his God, just as he had done before. Daniel does not change his rhythm to provoke attention, but he also does not hide his faith to protect himself. He continues doing what he had already been doing. The empire has issued a new law, but Daniel's devotion to God is older than the king's decree. This is the important point in chapter 6. Daniel's prayer is not a sudden act of rebellion. It is the continuation of a life already formed by faithfulness. The law creates a crisis, but the crisis only reveals what was already true. Daniel's loyalty to God is not a private decoration around his life. It is the foundation of his life. The men gather and find Daniel praying and seeking mercy before his God. Then they go to the king and remind him of the decree. They ask if he did not sign the law that anyone who prays to any god or man except the king must be thrown into the den of lions. The king confirms that the matter stands according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they reveal the target. Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to the king or the injunction he signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. The king is deeply distressed. He realizes he has been used. He sets his mind to deliver Daniel and labors until the sun goes down to rescue him. But the men press the law against him. No injunction or ordinance established by the king can be changed. So the king gives the command, and Daniel is brought and thrown into the den of lions. Before Daniel is lowered into the darkness, Darius speaks words that sound almost like hope, struggling against helplessness. May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. A stone is brought and laid on the mouth of the den. The king seals it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, so that nothing concerning Daniel can be changed. The scene becomes silent. Daniel is in the den. The stone is sealed. The law has spoken. The enemies have succeeded, and the king returns to his palace. But Darius cannot rest. He spends the night fasting. No diversions are brought to him. Sleep flees from him. The man who signed the decree is now trapped by the decree. Daniel is in the lion's den, but the text does not describe panic from him. At the break of day, the king rises and goes in haste to the den. As he comes near, he cries out in a tone of anguish. He calls Daniel the servant of the living God and asks if his God, whom he serves continually, has been able to deliver him from the lions. Then Daniel answers from the den. His voice comes from the place where death was expected. He says that his God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed him, because he was found blameless before God and before the king. The chapter does not present Daniel as saved because the law was unjust, even though it was. He is delivered because God rules over the place where human power reached its limit. The king could not change the law. The officials could not reverse their accusation. Daniel could not remove the stone. But God could shut the mouths of lions. The king is exceedingly glad and commands that Daniel be taken up out of the den. When Daniel is lifted out, no harm is found on him because he trusted in his God. Then judgment falls on the men who accuse Daniel. The king commands that they be brought and cast into the den of lions. The same place prepared for Daniel becomes the place of their downfall. After this, Darius writes to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. He commands that people tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. He declares that he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. Chapter 6 closes the narrative half of Daniel with a powerful echo of everything that came before. Daniel is still in exile, but still faithful. The empire has changed, but God has not. The pressure has taken a different form, but the answer is the same. The people of God can serve under earthly kingdoms without surrendering their worship to them. From youth to old age, Daniel's life becomes a witness. He survives Babylon. He serves under Persia. He faces jealous officials, unchangeable laws, sealed stones, and hungry lions. But the God who gave wisdom in chapter 1, revealed mysteries in chapter 2, walked with the faithful in the fire in chapter 3, humbled the proud king in chapter 4, and judged Babylon in chapter 5, now delivers his servant from the lion's den. After the stories of Daniel's faithfulness inside foreign kingdoms, the book now pulls back the curtain and shows what those kingdoms look like from heaven's perspective. In chapter 7 of the book of Daniel, the scene moves backward in time to the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. Daniel has a dream and visions of his head as he lies on his bed. From this point forward, the book becomes more symbolic, more prophetic, and more intense. The same world of kings and empires remains, but now Daniel sees its spiritual shape. He looks in his vision by night, and the four winds of heaven are stirring up the great sea. Out of the sea come four great beasts, each different from the other. The first is like a lion and has eagle's wings. Daniel watches until its wings are plucked off, and it is lifted from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind is given to it. Then another beast appears, a second like a bear. It is raised up on one side. It has 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it is told to arise and devour much flesh. After this, Daniel sees another beast, like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. This beast has 4 heads, and dominion is given to it. Then comes the 4th beast. Daniel does not compare it to any ordinary animal. It is terrifying, dreadful, and exceedingly strong. It has great iron teeth. It devours, breaks in pieces, and stamps what remains with its feet. It is different from all the beasts before it, and it has 10 horns. Daniel considers the horns, and then another horn rises among them, a little one. 3 of the first horns are plucked up before it. This horn has eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. The vision moves from the sea to beasts, from beasts to horns, and from horns to a voice of arrogance. The empires in chapter 2, shown as metals in a statue, now appear as violent beasts rising from chaos. The image has changed because the angle has changed. From the outside, empire may look glorious. From heaven's perspective, pride and violence make it beastly. This is one of the most important shifts in Daniel. The statue in chapter 2 showed human kingdoms as impressive and valuable: gold, silver, bronze, and iron. But in chapter 7, those same kinds of kingdoms are shown as beasts. The point is not that all political order is meaningless, but that human power becomes monstrous when it exalts itself, devours others, and refuses to recognize the rule of God. Then the vision suddenly leaves the beasts and enters a heavenly court. Daniel sees thrones placed, and the Ancient of Days takes his seat. His clothing is white as snow, and the hair of his head is like pure wool. His throne is fiery flames, and its wheels are burning fire. A stream of fire flows out from before him. Thousands upon thousands serve him, and countless multitudes stand before him. The court sits in judgment, and the books are opened. The scene is majestic and terrifying. Earthly beasts roar, but heaven sits. The fourth beast threatens, but the court opens. The little horn speaks great words, but the Ancient of Days does not lose control. Judgment does not begin on earth. It begins in the throne room of God. Daniel keeps watching because of the sound of the arrogant words the horn is speaking. Then the fourth beast is killed. Its body is destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. As for the other beasts, their dominion is taken away, though. Their lives are prolonged for a season and a time. Then comes the center of the vision. Daniel sees in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there comes one like a son of man. He comes to the Ancient of Days and is presented before him. To him is given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, so that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom is one that shall not be destroyed. Everything in the chapter has been moving toward this contrast. The beasts rise from the sea. The Son of Man comes with the clouds of heaven. The beasts seize, devour, and destroy. The Son of Man receives authority from God. The beasts are temporary. His dominion is everlasting. The phrase, one like a son of man, means a figure who appears in human likeness, in contrast to the beastly kingdoms. In the immediate vision, he receives the kingdom from the Ancient of Days and is closely connected with the victory of the saints. Later biblical interpretation, especially in the New Testament, sees this language as deeply connected to the Messiah. But within Daniel itself, the main point is already clear. The final kingdom will not belong to beasts, but to the one appointed by God. Daniel's spirit is troubled within him. The visions of his head alarm him. He approaches one of those standing there and asks for the truth about all this. The interpretation begins simple. These four great beasts are four kings, or kingdoms that shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever, and ever. Daniel especially wants to know about the fourth beast because it was different from all the others, exceedingly terrifying, with teeth of iron and claws of bronze, devouring, breaking in pieces, and stamping what remained with its feet. He also asks about the 10 horns and the other horn that came up before, which 3 fell the horn with eyes and a mouth speaking, great things which seemed greater than the others. As Daniel watches, that horn makes war with the saints and prevails over them for a time. The vision does not hide suffering. Before victory, there is pressure. Before the saints possess the kingdom, they are opposed. The arrogant power speaks against the Most High, wears out the saints of the Most High, and thinks to change times and law. But the power of the horn is not endless. It is given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Then the court sits in judgment. His dominion is taken away, consumed and destroyed to the end. Then the kingdom, the dominion, and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven are given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. This is where chapter 7 connects the stories of Daniel with the visions of Daniel. In the earlier chapters, God's people were pressured by kings' images, decrees, accusations, and death. Now Daniel sees that this pressure is part of a larger conflict between beastly human power and the everlasting kingdom of God. The chapter ends with Daniel deeply alarmed. His color changes and he keeps the matter in his heart. The vision is glorious, but it is also heavy. It shows victory, but not an easy road to victory. It shows judgment, but also suffering before judgment. It shows the kingdom, but also the arrogance of powers that rise before. The kingdom is fully revealed. Chapter 7 is the great doorway into the prophetic half of Daniel. It teaches the viewer to look at history with open eyes. Kingdoms may rise from the sea. Beasts may appear strong. Arrogant rulers may speak as if heaven is silent. But above every beast, there is a throne. Above every horn, there is a court. And beyond every empire, there is an everlasting dominion, given by God, a kingdom that will not pass away. After Daniel sees the broad vision of beastly kingdoms in the heavenly court, the book narrows the focus. The next vision is more specific, more violent, and more painful for the people. In chapter 8 of the book of Daniel, the vision comes during the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar. Daniel sees himself in Susa, the citadel in the province of Elam. And in the vision, he is beside the Ulai Canal. The setting is no longer simply the court of Babylon. The vision begins to move toward the world of future kingdoms that will rise after Babylon. Daniel lifts his eyes and sees a ram standing on the bank of the canal. It has 2 horns, and both are high, but one is higher than the other, and the higher one comes up last. The ram charges westward, northward, and southward. No beast can stand before it, and no one can rescue from its power. It does as it pleases and becomes great. The image is strong and aggressive. A kingdom is expanding. It pushes in multiple directions. It overpowers everything in front of it. At first, it seems unstoppable. But while Daniel is considering this, another figure appears. A male goat comes from the west across the face of the whole earth, moving so quickly that it does not touch the ground. The goat has a conspicuous horn between its eyes. It comes toward the ram with powerful wrath, strikes. It breaks its 2 horns and throws it to the ground. The ram has no strength to stand, and no one can rescue it. The goat becomes exceedingly great. But at the height of its power, the great horn is broken. In its place, 4 conspicuous horns arise toward the 4 winds of heaven. The vision moves quickly. Power rises. Power strikes. Power triumphs. Then power breaks. Daniel is watching kingdoms appear with force, dominate with speed, and then fracture into new forms. The angel later explains that the ram represents the kings of Media and Persia, and the goat represents the king of Greece. The great horn is the first king, and the 4 horns that arise after it point to the division that follows. Daniel is not being shown a random animal scene. He is being shown the movement of empires in symbolic form with political conflict portrayed as violent struggle. Then out of one of the horns comes a little horn. It grows exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. The vision becomes darker. This horn does not only expand politically, it grows against the host of heaven. It throws down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and tramples on them. It even becomes great against the prince of the hosts. The regular burnt offering is taken away, and the place of the sanctuary is overthrown. Because of transgression, a host is given over to it, together with the regular burnt offering. It throws truth to the ground, and it acts and prospers. The language is heavy, but the direction is clear. Daniel is not only seeing military conquest, he is seeing a ruler or power that attacks worship, desecrates what is holy, interrupts sacrifice, and throws truth underfoot. The conflict has moved from empire against empire to arrogant power against the worship of God. Then Daniel hears one holy one speaking, and another holy one asks, "How long will the vision be? The regular burnt offering be taken away, the transgressio, and that makes desolate continue, and the sanctuary and host be trampled underfoot?" The answer comes, "For 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state." This is one of the difficult points in chapter 8. The exact counting of the evenings and mornings has been interpreted in more than one way. Some understand the phrase as referring to a specific period connected to the interruption and restoration of temple worship. Others connect it more broadly to the limited time of oppression. But the main message of the vision is not hidden. The desecration will not last forever. God sets a boundary around the suffering of his people. Daniel wants to understand the vision. Then someone appears before him like the appearance of a man. Daniel hears a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, calling for Gabriel to make Daniel understand the vision. As Gabriel comes near, Daniel is frightened and falls on his face. Gabriel tells him to understand that the vision is for the time of the end. Daniel falls into a deep sleep with his face to the ground, but Gabriel touches him and makes him stand. He says he will make known what shall be at the latter end of the indignation, because it refers to the appointed time of the end. Then the interpretation is given. The ram with 2 horns is Media and Persia. The goat is Greece. The great horn between its eyes is the first king. The 4 horns that replace it represent 4 kingdoms that will arise from his nation, but not with his power. Then Gabriel describes a later king. He will be bold of face and skilled in intrigue. His power will be great, but not by his own power. He will cause fearful destruction and succeed in what he does. He will destroy mighty men and the people who are saints. By his cunning, he will make deceit prosper under his hand. In his own mind, he will become great. Without warning, he will destroy many. He will even rise up against the Prince of Princes, but he will be broken and not by human hand. The vision is seen because it refers to many days from now. Daniel is overcome. He lies sick for days. Then he rises and goes about the king's business, but he remains appalled by the vision and does not fully understand it. This ending matters. Daniel is not entertained by prophecy. He is shaken by it. The vision is not given as a puzzle for curiosity, but as a burden. He sees that history will bring seasons of oppression, deception, desecration, and suffering for the holy people. He sees that arrogant power can attack not only bodies and nations, but worship, truth, and the sanctuary itself. Yet chapter 8 also repeats the hope that runs through the book. The horn grows great, but it is not eternal. The sanctuary is trampled, but it is restored. The oppressor rises, but he is broken, and not by human hand. Daniel is learning that the people of God must be prepared for more than exile in a foreign land. They must be prepared for times when power becomes religiously hostile, when truth is thrown down, when worship is interrupted, and when the faithful cannot understand why God allows the darkness to last. But the vision also teaches that darkness has a limit. Human kingdoms fight. Arrogant rulers rise. Holy things are attacked. But God still appoints the time, still knows the end, and still breaks oppressive power without needing the strength of human hands. After visions of kingdoms, conflict, and desecration, Daniel does not respond with speculation. He opens the scriptures, turns his face toward God, and begins to pray. In chapter 9 of the book of Daniel, the scene takes place in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus by descent, a Mede who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. Daniel is now living after the fall of Babylon under a new empire, but his heart is still tied to Jerusalem, the temple, and the promises of God. The chapter begins with Daniel reading. He understands from the books, according to the word of the Lord given to Jeremiah the prophet, that the desolations of Jerusalem would last 70 years. Daniel sees that the time spoken by Jeremiah is connected to his own generation. Exile is not an abstract idea to him. It is the wound of his people, the silence of the ruined city, the absence of temple worship, and the consequence of covenant unfaithfulness. So Daniel turns his face to the Lord God, seeking him by prayer and pleas for mercy with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. The prophet who has received visions now becomes an intercessor. Before he asks for the future, he confesses the past. Daniel begins by acknowledging who God is, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Then he confesses the sin of the people. He does not speak as if the exile happened by accident. He says, "We have sinned, we have done wrong, we have acted wickedly, we have rebelled, turning aside from your commandments and rules." The prayer is not distant. Daniel does not say only they sinned. He says, "We sinned." Even though Daniel is one of the most faithful figures in the book, he stands with his people in confession. Kings, princes, fathers, and all the people of the land are included. The shame belongs to Israel, but righteousness belongs to the Lord. He remembers that God sent his servants the prophets, but the people did not listen. He recognizes that the curse and oath written in the law of Moses have been poured out upon them because they sinned against God. The destruction of Jerusalem is not treated as a random tragedy. It is the result of covenant rebellion, just as the scriptures had warned. This is one of the most important points in chapter 9. Daniel's prayer is built on scripture. He reads Jeremiah, remembers the law of Moses, understands the reason for exile, and prays according to God's covenant mercy. Daniel continues by recalling the Exodus. God brought his people out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand and made a name for himself. But now, because of sin, Jerusalem and God's people have become a byword among the nations. Daniel pleads not on the basis of Israel's righteousness, but on the basis of God's mercy. He asks the Lord to turn away his anger from Jerusalem, his holy hill. He asks God to make his face shine upon his sanctuary, which is desolate. He asks God to see the city called by his name. The prayer becomes increasingly urgent. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, pay attention and act. Delay not for your own sake. Daniel's concern is not only that the people return to comfort. His concern is the honor of God's name, the restoration of Jerusalem, and the mercy of the Lord toward a guilty people. While Daniel is still speaking, praying, confessing his sin and the sin of his people Israel, and presenting his plea before the Lord, Gabriel comes to him in swift flight at the time of the evening sacrifice. This detail matters. The temple is destroyed, but Daniel still thinks in the rhythm of worship. There may be no sacrifice burning in Jerusalem, but the hour of sacrifice still frames his prayer. Gabriel tells Daniel that at the beginning of his pleas, a word went out, and he has come to tell it to him because Daniel is greatly loved. He tells him to consider the word and understand the vision. Then comes one of the most difficult and important prophecies in the book. 70 weeks are decreed about Daniel's people and his holy city. They are connected with finishing transgression, putting an end to sin, atoning for iniquity, bringing in everlasting righteousness, sealing both vision and prophet, and anointing a most holy place. The prophecy moves beyond the simple end of exile. Daniel had been thinking about 70 years, but Gabriel speaks of 70 weeks. The answer reaches deeper than returning from Babylon. It points toward the larger problem beneath exile, sin itself, the need for atonement, the future of Jerusalem, and the purposes of God over history. The 70 weeks have been interpreted in different ways among faithful readers, especially in how the periods are counted and how they connect to later events. But the central movement is clear. God has appointed a larger timetable for Jerusalem and his people, and the final answer to exile is not merely political return. It involves atonement, righteousness, judgment, and the fulfillment of God's redemptive plan. Gabriel says that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there will be a measured period. Jerusalem will be built again, with squares and moat, but in a troubled time. Restoration will come, but not without pressure. The city will rise, but the story will not become simple. Then the prophecy darkens. After the appointed period, an anointed one will be cut off and shall have nothing. The people of a prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end will come with a flood, and to the end there will be war. Desolations are decreed. The language is weighty, and it does not allow the viewer to think that restoration means the end of all suffering. Daniel is shown that even after return, Jerusalem will face conflict, destruction, and desolation. The holy city remains central, but its future is marked by both hope and anguish. Gabriel then speaks of a covenant confirmed for 1 week, the stopping of sacrifice and offering, and the abomination that makes desolate until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. The vision connects with the earlier language of desecration and oppression, but now within a broader timeline of sin, atonement, Jerusalem, and final judgment. Daniel's prayer began with the ruins of Jerusalem and the 70 years of Jeremiah. But the answer from heaven expands the horizon. God is not only counting the years of exile, He is moving history toward a deeper redemption. He will deal with transgression. He will address iniquity. He will bring righteousness. He will judge desolation. And He will not abandon His people or His holy city to the confusion of history. Chapter 9 shows Daniel at one of his most human and most prophetic moments. He is not standing before a king. He is not interpreting another man's dream. He is on his face before God, carrying the guilt of his people in prayer. And while he prays, heaven answers with a vision that reaches from exile to restoration, from Jerusalem to atonement, from sin to the appointed purposes of God. The chapter teaches that Daniel's prophecies are not given to satisfy curiosity about the future. They are given in the place of prayer, repentance scripture, and covenant hope. Before, Daniel is shown what will happen. He remembers why exile happened. And before he sees the timeline of restoration, he confesses that only mercy can bring the people home. After Daniel's prayer and the prophecy of the 70 weeks, the book moves into its final and longest vision. What began with exile now reaches toward the end of history in chapters 10 to 12 of the book of Daniel. The final vision begins in the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia. Daniel has been mourning for 3 full weeks. He has eaten no delicacies, no meat or wine has entered his mouth, and he has not anointed himself. The prophet is older now, and the weight of what he has seen still rests heavily on him. Daniel is beside the great river, the Tigris, when he lifts his eyes and sees a glorious heavenly figure. The description is overwhelming, clothed in linen with a belt of fine gold, a body like beryl, a face like lightning, eyes like flaming torches, arms and legs like polished bronze, and the voice like the sound of a multitude. The men with Daniel do not see the vision, but a great trembling falls on them, and they flee to hide. Daniel is left alone. His strength leaves him. His radiant appearance changes, and he falls into a deep sleep with his face to the ground. Then a hand touches him and sets him, trembling on his hands and knees. The messenger tells Daniel that he is greatly loved, and that from the first day he set his heart to understand and humbled himself before God. His words were heard. But then the vision opens a hidden layer of reality. The messenger says that the prince of the kingdom of Persia resisted him for 21 days until Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help him. He has come to make Daniel understand what is to happen to his people in the latter days. This is one of the most important and mysterious moments in Daniel. The chapter shows that earthly conflict is not only political. Behind the movements of empires, there is also spiritual conflict. The text does not explain everything about this unseen struggle, but it reveals enough to show that Daniel's prayers, the fate of nations, and the suffering of God's people are connected to a deeper battle that human eyes cannot see. Daniel is overwhelmed again. His strength is gone. The messenger touches him, strengthens him, and tells him not to fear. Peace is spoken over him. Then Daniel is prepared to hear what is written in the book of truth. In chapter 11 of the book of Daniel, the vision becomes a long and detailed movement through kings, alliances, betrayals, wars, and shifting power. The kings of Persia are followed by a mighty king whose kingdom is broken and divided toward the four winds of heaven. Then, the vision focuses on conflicts between the king of the south and the king of the north. The chapter moves like a battlefield seen from above. Kings rise. Daughters are given in marriage to secure alliances. Armies advance. Fortresses fall. Treaties are made and broken. One ruler gains power through intrigue. Another responds with force. Wealth, deception, ambition, and violence move across the scene. The vision is not written like a simple story of one battle. It is the long, exhausting pressure of history. The people of God live in the middle of kingdoms that fight over land power, honor, and control. Jerusalem and the holy people are caught in the path of imperial ambition. Then the focus turns toward a contemptible ruler, one who obtains the kingdom through flatteries. He acts deceitfully. He becomes strong with a small people. He enters rich areas unexpectedly. He distributes plunder, spoil, and goods. He plots against strongholds. His rise is marked not only by military power, but by cunning. As the vision continues, his arrogance becomes more openly religious. Forces from him profane the temple and fortress, take away the regular burnt offering, and set up the abomination that makes desolate. He corrupts with flattery those who violate the covenant, but the people who know their God stand firm and take action. Some of the wise give understanding to many, yet they fall by sword and flame, by captivity and plunder for days. Their suffering is real. Their faithfulness is costly. But even their fall is not meaningless, because the text says it refines, purifies, and makes them white until the time of the end. This section can be difficult because it moves through many historical conflicts with symbolic and prophetic language. Many readers connect much of chapter 11 to struggles after Persia, especially the conflicts that affected the Jewish people before the New Testament era. Others also see patterns that reach forward toward final opposition against God. But the main message is clear. Arrogant rulers may persecute them, faithful, and profane what is holy. Yet God has already set the limit and the appointed end. The vision then describes a king who exalts himself above every god, speaks astonishing things against the God of gods, and prospers until the indignation is accomplished. Again, the book of Daniel shows the same pattern. Human power becomes most dangerous when it refuses limits, lifts itself above God, and turns rule into blasphemy. The chapter ends with conflict continuing, but not forever. The ruler comes to his end with none to help him. The empire that seemed terrifying reaches a boundary it cannot cross. Then, chapter 12 of the book of Daniel opens with a final word of hope. At that time, Michael, the great prince who has charge of Daniel's people, shall arise. There will be a time of trouble such as never has been since there was a nation until that time. But at that time Daniel's people shall be delivered, everyone whose name is found written in the book. The suffering is intense, but the promise is stronger. The story does not end with oppression. It moves beyond political rescue into something far greater. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. This is one of the clearest statements of resurrection hope in the Old Testament. Daniel has shown kingdoms rising and falling, saints suffering, rulers boasting temples being profaned, and faithful people enduring. But now the hope goes beyond survival in history. God's justice reaches beyond the grave. Daniel is told to shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Knowledge will increase. He sees two others standing by the river, and a question is asked. How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? The answer is solemn and mysterious. The timing belongs to God. Daniel hears, but he does not fully understand. So he asks what the outcome of these things will be. The answer he receives is not a complete chart of every event, but a command to go his way. The words are, shut up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall purify themselves and be made white and refined. But the wicked shall act wickedly. None of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. The final word to Daniel is deeply personal. He is told to go his way until the end. He will rest, and then he will stand in his allotted place at the end of the days. This is how the book of Daniel ends. Not with Babylon, not with Persia, not with the beasts, not with the little horn, not with arrogant kings. It ends with endurance, purification, resurrection, and the promise that God's faithful servant will stand when the appointed end comes. Daniel began as a young exile in Babylon, surrounded by pressure to forget who he was. He ends as an aged prophet who has seen the rise and fall of empires, the arrogance of kings, the suffering of the saints, the conflict behind history, and the final hope of God's people. The message of the book is now complete. Human kingdoms rise, but they do not reign forever. The faithful may suffer, but they are not forgotten. Evil may speak loudly, but heaven has already appointed its end. And beyond every empire, every trial, every exile, and every grave, the God of Daniel rules over history, judgment, resurrection, and eternity. And so we come to the end of our journey through the book of Daniel. If you've made it this far, I want to invite you to mark this moment of learning and spiritual reflection. Write in the comments below, not only for engagement, but as a sincere testimony of what God has spoken to your heart. I understand the message of Daniel. I choose to remain faithful to God. This is not just a sentence. It is a declaration from someone who understands that faithfulness matters even in exile. It is a declaration from someone who sees that the kingdoms of this world may rise and fall, but the kingdom of God will stand forever. And I want to ask you, what spoke to you the most in this book? Was it Daniel's decision not to defile himself in Babylon? Was it the dream of the statue and the kingdom that will never be destroyed? Was it the courage of the three friends in the fiery furnace? Was it the warning against pride in the life of Nebuchadnezzar? Was it the writing on the wall? Was it Daniel's prayer? Was it the hope of resurrection at the end of the book? What part of your life needs to be strengthened by the message of Daniel right now? Maybe you are living under pressure. Maybe you feel surrounded by a culture that wants to rename you, reshape you, and make you forget who you are before God. Maybe you are facing fear, uncertainty, spiritual opposition, or a season where obedience feels costly. But Daniel teaches us that God is faithful in exile. God gives wisdom in confusion. God is present in the fire. God shuts the mouth of lions. God humbles proud kings. God judges arrogant empires. and God has already appointed the end of history. The book of Daniel does not promise that the faithful will never suffer, but it shows that suffering is not the final word. It does not say that evil will never rise, but it shows that evil will never reign forever. It does not hide the darkness of history, but it reveals the God who rules above history. So write in the comments what this book taught you. Share the part that touched your heart the most. When you testify, you strengthen your own faith, and you may encourage someone else who is trying to remain faithful in their own Babylon. And I pray that this journey through Daniel will not end as just another video you watched. May it become a turning point in the way you see your life, your faith, your trials, and the world around you. May you learn to stand when everyone else bows. May you pray when the decree says to be silent. May you trust God when the furnace is hot, when the lions are near, and when the future feels uncertain. May you remember that the Most High rules over the kingdom of men, and that His kingdom will never be destroyed. And if you do not yet know God personally, this is the moment to come to Him. Do not wait until your life collapses like Babylon. Do not wait until pride hardens your heart. Do not wait until the writing is on the wall. The same God who rules history is calling you today. Recognize that you need Him. Turn away from sin. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. He is the true King, the one who brings forgiveness, redemption, and eternal life. The kingdoms of this world cannot save you. Human power cannot save you. Your own wisdom cannot save you. But Jesus can. If you want to surrender your life to God, pray sincerely from your heart. Lord Jesus, I give my life to you. Forgive my sins, cleanse my heart, and teach me to walk faithfully with you. I believe that you are the true King, and I place my hope in your eternal kingdom. May the Lord bless you, keep you, give you wisdom, strengthen your faith, and help you remain faithful until the end. And I'll see you in the next video, God willing.